Hey everyone, and welcome to the video version of the Funnily Enough Show podcast. This is where you get the raw, unedited version of the video calls that I do with all of the guests on the show. If you're more of an audio person, then be sure to head over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify or your favorite podcasting platform where you can listen to it in your ear. But if you're more of a video person, you want to watch the live call, then it's coming right up now. Brian Fanzo, welcome to the Funnily Enough Show. How are you doing today?
I am doing wonderful. Thanks so much for having me.
No problem. You're looking fine with those glasses for the people that are watching.
Yeah, it's not a normal look for me wearing glasses, and I don't wear my sunglasses inside usually. But a busy week this week, so lots of hours on the computer, so I had to wear these blue blockers.
That's fair. I like it. I see quite a lot of people wearing them, and I feel like it's quite a good look.
Yeah, it's a different look, right? I guess if anything, it's a psychology and a different look. That's for sure.
Totally. Well, Brian, you are the Millennial keynote speaker, so I want to ask a serious question first. Just how millennial are you? What do you know are the last three emojis that you have used on your phone?
Oh, I know. I pretty much know that probably easily, but it's only because I'm an emoji like massive user. I wouldn't say I'm that millennial, but it's definitely the sunglass smiling emoji, the poop emoji, and more than likely the confused look emoji. Those are like the three that I seem to use on a regular basis.
I was kind of hoping it was going to be the eggplant, but
no eggplant. No, I'm not that millennial. See, that's part of I'm a pager wearing millennial is what I call myself. So I'm on the cusp of that millennial generation. I was born in 1981, so I live on the elder millennial side for sure.
Love it. So you still got the manners.
Ooh.
Amazing, Brian. What I'd love to talk to you about today is the business of speaking. So we've had the likes of Mark Schaefer, Mary Smith, Chris Brogan on this, and all of you guys are just incredible speakers. But one thing we haven't spoken about is the actual business of speaking. So I'd love to get your insight into that, because I know you've launched a couple of things recently around that. So I did a bit of research on Mr. Fanzo and saw that back in 2014 was when you decided to go all in as an entrepreneur. And you said at that time you didn't really have a following on social. So how have you gone from that position just 5 years ago to where you are now, where you've, like, just off air we're speaking about how much travel you're doing speaking, and you've obviously got a large following online. Like, how have you gone from that position to where you are now?
So I mean, so November 2nd, 2013, I kind of had an epiphany on social media. I was kind of burnt out. I was using a lot of it for my own personal use, actually. So I'm a big sports fan, so I was connecting with fellow sports fans on there. I started to use it as I was integrating more with the marketing team. And it was actually, something with my mom, and my mom had kind of just had a talk with me, and she was like, "Are you enjoying what you're doing online?" And then, and I would summarize it in saying, she was like, "Well, I'm just worried about, the things that you do really well in life are the fact that you've been unapologetically yourself. You always are yourself." She's like, "I don't see you wearing a hat in the profile picture. I hear you often apologizing for talking fast." Some of these things that, like, I think only a mom can. And I remember being like, "Yeah, Mom, of course I am. I'm the same person online." Like, yeah. And then I was thinking about it. I'm like, it took me 25 minutes to write a 3-sentence Facebook post. And I was like, that is so not me. Like, I'm not a perfectionist. I've never been that way. And so that was the day I kind of like just decided. I wrote on my mirror in my bathroom that I wrote "be yourself" in all capitalization. And I just decided from that moment forward, I was going to make sure I was going to put myself in check. And about a couple months later, into 2014, as your research is spot on, the startup I was working at got acquired, and I was pretty much told it was my last day. They said, "We love what you're doing as an evangelist, and you do amazing things, but in our company, that role won't work." And I was kind of like my jump start into entrepreneurship. And so since then, I think that's been really my secret. Crazy enough, it's been, I do it my way. I am not afraid to call people out. I don't kiss anyone's butt at all. I'm much into the game of, I gain a lot of respect. I remember Gary Vaynerchuk, one of the first things he ever said to me in person when we finally met was he goes, he's like, man, you stand out. And he goes, and funny enough, you stand out because you push back on me as much as you celebrate me. And that earned, for me, that was instant respect. Cause I not only did he realize that, he also wasn't afraid to tell me that, which I think is also kind of a, kudos to him. And that's just kind of been my thing. So I think for me, the social media growth, a lot of it has been a lot of focus, a lot of enjoyment. I really enjoy being on social. I get that all the time. Like, Brian, you host 3 podcasts. I have 3 daughters. I travel every week. I'm growing my speaking business. I love the social media aspect. I love telling stories. I love engaging. And I made a comment yesterday. Like, Twitter has been my favorite social network since the beginning, but it's also because it's the network I spend a lot of time on. And so I think it's a combo of that, of just being unapologetically myself online, and then just kind of telling stories. I talk about, being diagnosed ADHD. I talk about struggling through my divorce. I talk about how entrepreneurship was the hardest job I've ever had, hands down. And so I think those are kind of things that are a little bit different than a lot of other people are. And I think it's allowed me to kind of really grow a community online, no matter the social network. And I'm very blessed for that.
Amazing. So you feel like the biggest contributor to your growth from a business and social following point of view is literally just being yourself and sharing what's on your mind, and, like you say, calling people out, complimenting people if you feel like they need complimented, and just telling stories.
Yeah, for sure. And I also, I'm a positive, optimistic person every single day. I love life. I believe we're living in the greatest time in history. So when I call people out, like, for me, I have no problem calling people out, like, on a topic, but I'm not a negative person at all. So I always tell people, they'll say, Brian, well, I'm not sure who you don't like. And I always reply and say, look who I don't share or engage with. Right? Like, I don't negatively talk about anybody. I just think me spending time being negative is me giving them more time than than that person deserves. So I'm a very, like, I celebrate, I share content, I say yes to podcasts. I love that side. And my mantra on that is, like, show you care, right? Like, if everybody's trying to get on someone's radar, or someone has a new book out or whatever it may be, and we're all making an ask, it's easy to get lost in that mix. But I'll go, like, 4 steps deeper. And you started off the show saying, hey, Brian, I did my research, and your statement right there showed you're valuing my time and you care about me being on your show. And that's the littlest things. It's so crazy. Like, those little things are what goes such a long way. And when you do it with, like, truly being yourself, I think for me, that is hands down the answer to how I've grown my following.
Absolutely. And I can personally say that is true of you, because I remember speaking at the same event, CMA, 1 or 2 years ago, and I was leaving in the bar, and you were sat in the bar, and the last thing that you said to me was, hey man, if there's anything I can help with when it comes to speaking, reach out to me anytime. And I've remembered that, and that's one of the main reasons I wanted to get you on the show. So it's like, what's the return on investment of that one sentence that you gave to me? Well,
bingo right there.
Exactly. So if you're spending all this time on social, how do you balance the creating side of it versus the consuming side of it? Because sometimes I can get lost on, like, the Twitter or Instagram explore pages. So how do you make that balance of creating more than you're consuming?
Oh, I wish I had a real answer to that on a balance perspective of it. I don't think I have a balance on it. I will hands down say I consume much more than I create, and I create a lot, right? The way that I kind of look at it or identify, I think this goes along with, like, ADHD, but it goes along with, like, entrepreneurship. I've learned, because it's taken me a while as an entrepreneur, to figure out when I work best or how I work best. And so one of the things that I do from, like, a week to week basis is I kind of put together a list of, well, okay, this is what I must accomplish. This is what I must create. I don't put times on it. I don't put, like, hey, you spend an hour creating a video. Like, I'm very much on the sense of, like, these are what you need to create, Brian. And then therefore, this consumption part is so much fun for me. Like, I use the tool Flipboard. I'm not sure if you use Flipboard. Flipboard is where I consume all of my blog content. Like, I like to say, I haven't been to a website, no knock on any website designers. Like, I haven't been to a website to read a blog in probably 4 years. It's a tool that, like, it's a magazine that aggregates my content, but I spend about 30 to 45 minutes on that tool every single day. And sometimes I'll catch myself an hour and 15 minutes in. And I used to be like, oh, Brian, what are you doing? And now I just know that I might have to work longer or my hours might shift to do a lot of that creation. And, I'm also really good at procrastinating. So, it's a Friday where we're recording this show. I know I have two of my own podcasts that I need to record today, later on today. I also have a video for one of my mastermind groups. And so I think that's another piece of it is, I think it's a little bit of prioritization, but knowing when you work. I've embraced a mindset of there's certain hours of the day, mainly like that 1 to 3 p.m. for me, even 1 to 5 p.m. That I struggle often. And I have no problem checking out and hanging out on Twitter during those hours more. Even laying on the couch, reading a magazine, reading the digital magazine. And then I jump back on at 7 p.m. and work till midnight, whatever that may be. And so I think my answer to that is not really controlling the consumption, but it's making sure that I prioritize the creation. Because I will say that, like, for me as a speaker and part of the speaking business, I do things a little bit unique. Almost all of my leads come from social media and my content. I'd say close to 80%. I did the numbers for 2018, and it was a little over 80%. And so with that being said, like, you're creating free content and you're putting out your blog and your podcast and your video. So I have to put notes on my I have a sticky note on my monitor. It pretty much says, my sales, my outbound is my content. So when I'm feeling not motivated to create content, or like, I need to be doing business related activities, why am I doing this? Part of it, a reminder for me is that engagement on Twitter, those replying to comments on LinkedIn posts, that telling a story on an Instagram story, that is my outbound strategy. And it takes a reminder on that, because sometimes you'd be like, okay, I need to go, I need to reply to these emails. I need to work on these invoices. I need to have a call to action on this webpage. But for me, social media driving 80% of my business, it's a good reminder to remember that consumption and replying and creating content is just as much a business activity as the other things I do.
Yeah, and I think everything you say there, I can sum up in one sentence, which is, or what I get from that is, find and do what works for you.
Yes.
So,
A 9 to 5 is a fallacy on, the world of how we're told to work. And the reason I think the world we're so much more productive and innovative today is people are finally embracing the fact that not everyone works the same hours, the same time, the same way.
Exactly. If you're a night owl or a morning person, it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't.
Yeah, do what works for you. So I kind of want to carry on with that line of thought then, and with your journey in the speaking business. When I look at the speaking business, I see stages. And when I say stages, I don't actually mean physical stages. I mean, when you first start out as a speaker, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but this is the way that I see it. When you start out as a speaker, typically you do gigs for free, smaller gigs, and then you might start getting expenses paid, and then you start getting paid gigs, and then that kind of, you get more and more money and bigger stages. Is that how it's worked for you? And if it hasn't, then what's it looked like? And if it has, how can people progress from each of those stages to get onto the bigger stages?
So it's funny. So I think, and the way I like to set this up is I agree with most of that. I think that it is an interesting game. One of the things with speaking is that, people don't really hire you back-to-back years. So it's kind of a constant business development game. Therefore, the stages generate more stages. Speakers get you, more speaker gigs. But I also think, one of the things I kind of learned along the way is, yeah, you do speak for free early on, and that is definitely a concept. But like today, I like to say I don't speak for free. I speak for 100% discount pretty often. And the reason I use that as a narrative is, I still invoice them my full speaking fee at 100% discount when I'm speaking at events. And a lot of that is the psychology of letting them know, like, this is my full-time revenue job. But I've worked really hard on, actually, I think I have it on my wall behind me, and one of these crazy sticky notes that they're watching. I have a really in-depth metric of how do I gauge a gig is worthwhile to me. And money is not, money is one of the 21 characteristics, but it can go everything from a relationship building, access to industry experts, who am I sharing the stage with, quality of video. And I've learned that over time that, just because a gig isn't paying me the most amount of money, it does not mean it's not the most for my business. It's funny. It was probably about 4 months ago, or 5 months ago. I had 2 gigs come in around the same date, and I was trying to decide between the 2 of them, and I ended up going with the gig that was actually paying me less. And the ROI since then has been I've closed 4 additional gigs off of the gig that I selected,
Wow.
the lower price one. Now, I don't know if I want to be able to do that in the other one, but when I looked at where it was going to give me access, because a lot of times you have to think about it, are the people that are seeing me, is there a chance they would hire me? Are the people that are seeing me the first time they've ever seen me? Are the people that I'm sharing the stage with as speakers someone that are also givers that would recommend me? Those kind of things are things to think about. So yes, there is a journey. Like, you can't become, being a speaker, throwing it in your bio on your social media does not really make you a speaker. I also would say speaking is a craft that I study and respect and practice, and I know you as well, Gavin, and some of the people that you've on the show, those likes of Marcus Sheridan, a good friend of ours. I think that's one of those things that you'd only get better by getting on more stages. And so I'm a big believer. Like 2017, I tried to do a lot less discounted gigs, and I did, and my business got crushed because people saw me on less stages, people recommended me less, people didn't understand what I was talking about as much. And so in 2018, I pivoted that back. I had my best year ever. And this year, my revenue model, 90% of my business is speaking. In 2019, and in 2015 it was 10%.
Wow.
So it's definitely been a switch, but it's it's a combination of understanding what works for you. I can tell my secret is, if the audience has never heard of me, if they don't even, and I'm not saying I have an ego, but if they've never listened to my podcast, they've never followed me on social media, and they come to my session, that's my ideal client. That is because I believe like that bar is very far. They're like, wait a second, who is this guy with his hat and crazy shoes or whatever? That's my ideal audience. So when I'm prioritizing that and the prices are the same, or I'm looking at so I look at that as a much bigger puzzle as well. And I can tell you, one of my also goals is getting gigs to hire me back-to-back years.
Yeah.
I care about the community. I always invest in an entire day at the event. I don't fly in, fly out. And so those are little things as well that along the way kind of make those stages jump. But I can tell you, I might believe, I started speaking the very first time I ever took a stage was 2006 for the government client that I was working for. So as much as it seems like an overnight success or a crazy fast hockey stick, and I believe it is, I'm very, very blessed to be riding this wave. I'm not new to speaking. I'm brand new to speaking business, right? Like,
Yeah.
I guess if you look at that from the two things.
That's so fascinating with the more free gigs you did, inverted commas, the people that are watching, the more your business grew. 2018. I love that. I think, and I love the concept of having more factors than just money that you're looking at when determining whether you get on a stage for someone.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to remember, like, too, being very strategic, right? Like, every event that I attend, I write down 4 people's names in my notes field on my phone, and I do research on them. What's the most recent blog they wrote? Do they have a book coming out? Do they go on a family vacation? And I go out of my way. I've stayed, this year alone, I've pushed out 6 different flights to stay an extra night to see a different speaker speak. I sit front row. And most of the time, I'm like, Brian, you're a speaker. What the heck are you doing? Like, why'd you do that? And for me, it goes back to the same thing I'm doing online, right? Caring a little bit more than someone else. And, speakers recommend other speakers. Like, if I do really good at an event, they contact me. They're like, Brian, I loved you. I can't hire you for next year. Maybe I'll hire you in 2 years. You know my audience. Give me 2 or 3 speakers you think I'd be great for this audience, right? Like, so how do you become that? How do you connect with that piece of it? And so, it's funny, the little things. Be yourself. I wear my hat on stage. I'm unapologetic, right? Go out of your way to care about others. Care about the event. I reach out to event organizers, almost every single event organizer that is a business gig, and I ask them, what sponsor should I celebrate the most on my Twitter account? Is there a certain audience member that you would love me to introduce me to before I get on stage? And these aren't like giant asks.
Wow.
They take me 30 seconds, but I'm extremely strategic, especially if an event is a 100% discount event. I can tell you, I have how I build my presentation, how I present myself before stage, off stage, the words I use even within my presentations are very strategic, used based on that over holistic value, right? And so money is, I'm building a business. This is not a .org. I have, child support. I have a new girlfriend and her daughter, so I have 4 daughters to feed. I'm building a business. I will never hesitate to say that money is not important, but it's also, how do I build this for the rest of my life. I have no hesitation to say I will be speaking for the next 40 years, and it will be my business. And so I play a long game, but I also play this game of how do I generate more business? Sometimes it's taking a little bit less money up front for a great opportunity to put down, the bigger opportunities down the road.
So much gold. So much gold. And it's made me think about my own strategy when I go to conferences or speak on stages. Amazing. Brian, I'm going to interrupt proceedings because it's time to play one of my favorite games. It's called the 5-second rule. Have you ever played it before?
I don't think I have.
Okay, so the rules are super simple. I've got 10 cards here. I'm going to read 10 statements, and they might be things like name 3 types of ice cream.
Okay.
I've got 5 seconds after I read the statement to give me your answer to that statement. If you get the answers right, you get a point. If you don't get a point. And you're competing against all the other guests. So,
all right. I'm glad I talk fast.
Now, do you want to go red or do you want to go yellow?
I'm a yellow person. Bring on yellow.
Yellow it is. Are you ready for this?
Let's do it.
Name 3 best things about going to school.
Recess, PE, and food.
Nice. Solid start. Strong start. Name 3 crime or spy novel authors.
0. Ooh, you got me there.
I'd have no idea there. Name 3 things that you might need to iron.
My shirt, my pants, and my socks.
Nice. Ironing socks. That's
a legit sock game.
That's a level commitment. Yeah. This is a tough one. Name 3 fashion designers.
Ooh, Versace. Oh man, yeah, you got me that one. I don't know.
Unlucky. Name 3 places you would wear shorts.
The Bahamas, the beach, and a pool.
Nice. Name 3 soups, types of soup.
Chicken noodle, broccoli, tomato.
Very nice. I had soup for lunch today. It was good.
Oh, nice. I had soup last night for dinner.
Nice one. Name 3 sports played on a pitch or a court.
Tennis, football, soccer.
Nice. Name 3 things that begin with the letter E.
Elephant, eggplant, epiphany.
Nice. Name 3 brands of bottled water.
Zima. Oh no, that's not even one. Hint.
Oh, we're out of time. Final one is name 3 blue things. Color blue.
Water. Man, that's a hard one too.
Out of time.
Didn't finish up good.
Ryan, you got 6 out of 10, which I feel is quite a respectable.
I'll take that.
Yeah.
I'll take that. The author one and the the designer one. You could give me 50 seconds or 5 minutes. I might have gotten those. So the bottled water and blue. Those are the 2 I should have got, but I'll take it. I'll take it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty respectable. So let's carry on this conversation about the speaking, and also quite interested about this pricing side of being a speaker. So for the listeners that are listening that are maybe new to the game of speaking or want to get into speaking, how do you figure out how much to cost, how much to price yourself at? Do you have I'm not asking for your price here, but do you have a set price, and has that gone up over time, or are you looking at it, how much value am I bringing to the audience, or are you looking for the event organizer to come with you with a number?
So it's a confusing one, right? Because there's no metric, there's no chart. And when someone says, well, I look at the value I provide to the event, value is also something that we all determine in our own head, right? It's like a fantasy metric in that sense. So one of the things for me was, gauging what other people that I believe I was on their level. And part of that comes down to building really great relationships and not being afraid to ask how much they get paid. Also kind of measuring what the event is getting paid. But I can tell you the secret for me has been understanding how I myself factor my value so that I'm confident when I'm negotiating and presenting it. And I'll give you an example of that is I moved, and I'm happy, I'm pretty transparent. I moved my numbers from 5,000 to 10,000 US dollars per keynote. And that $10,000 jump, all of a sudden my negotiation felt weird because I was like, I don't feel like I deserve this $10,000. And I was working, actually, it's a good friend of mine, Phil M. Jones,
Yep.
is just a world-class sales speaker. And he's was just working with me on, presenting myself on sales and emails. And he's like, Fanzo, when you present all the digital things that you do for an event, and you're talking about those and you deliver your fee, then you have like this like power. You're like, know what's going on. But if you're just going in it the other way, no wonder everyone's negotiating you down. And so what I started to do is I created a package, and I told people, when you buy me, you don't buy me for an hour, you buy me for the day. And I will do 10 tweets. I will do, Instagram. I will do a podcast where I mention your name. And for a lot of speakers, they're like, wow, Brian, you're doing all that extra work. And some people are like, well, you must be doing that because you're not very good on stage. And these are all people that just don't understand me, don't understand the game. And so what I'd figured out was, as soon as I added that as a package, I believe that $10,000 number was hands down well worth it for the event organizer. Not only was I able to demonstrate the value I had, but I was able to do some of the things. And here's the funny thing: I was gonna be doing those things anyhow. Like, right, let's be real, it's just the way that I work. And so I think when you're figuring out your fee, it's one of those things that you have to test. You also, you don't know that you're charging too much until you charge too much, right? Like, that's something that, it took me a while to get to that spot. And sometimes I will even, ask organizers that tell me, man, Brian, you were amazing afterwards, right? They give you all these glory. That glory is great. Like, oh, you were a best speaker, one of the best reviewed. But asking questions like, if I would have charged more, would you still have hired me? What are some of the things that advice you would give me when I'm presenting myself to your event? I always ask, how did you discover me? And it's funny, they'll be like, so I've known about you for a long time, but it was a LinkedIn video that you did where you popped back on my radar for me to reach out, whatever that may be. And I also think there's just there's a overall functionality of, and someone, Jay Bear, who reminds me of this all the time, right? We often talk as speakers, what are the total amount of gigs that you've done? And you have to say, rather than saying total amount of gigs, it should be total amount of revenue you've generated, right? Like, because the number of gigs, and this is something that someone asked me early on, is they said, Brian, would you rather do 10 gigs at $10,000, or would you rather do 40 gigs that get you to that same $100,000 mark? And I said 40 gigs, hands down. Like, I love the speaking. And when I said that, they're like, that's the dumbest answer for someone who wants to build a speaking business, right? And I think that's just kind of how you have to look at it. And I also think when you're looking at speaking pricing, everyone's different, because I'm not generating any leads for an agency. I don't own an agency. I have no agency ties. I have no book. Knock on wood, I'll have a book very soon, but like, I have no book. I don't have an online course that I sell. Therefore, for me, when I'm talking about my value, oftentimes I will say speaking is 90% of my revenue. I make this known. I'm not afraid to say that, but it also lets people clear that you're not going to hear me sell. You're not going to hear me promote. I care more about your event success than me being a superstar. And I think that's overall extremely important. And now, last thing I'll say on this is you have to know your own role. I have a great social following. I host 3 podcasts, but I will say in the negotiation, I understand that my name isn't big enough to sell tickets ahead of time for your event. But what I work really hard on is being a part of your event and providing the best thing that I can do on stage to where I sell tickets to your next year's event. And I do that through my commitment to you and your event. And oftentimes I get mad respect, like, wait a second. I'm like, yeah, I admit, you put my name on a billboard, I'll sell some tickets to my audience, but I don't have the fame of, of a Seth Godin or someone that, man, you put, Scott Stratton, whoever you may put on a billboard. But I also realize that I get that feedback all the time where, man, Brian, you energized an audience to be committed to come back here again, right? And so knowing all of these things is extremely important when you're presenting your value propositions. I didn't really give an answer to how you find the fee, but that's kind of how I've kind of built my understanding of scaling up and scaling down.
Yeah, well, there's 2 things that I could pick there that I particularly like was the packaging up of your talk. So it's not just I'm charging you for an hourly rate, for example. And second of all, I love the idea of saying to them, look, I know I'm not big enough to sell tickets, but I will help you sell tickets to next year's event by doing X, Y, and Z. That's gold. That's gold. Brian, I would love to speak to you for longer about this, and hopefully we can catch up in person sometime to just chat all
Yes,
things
sir.
business, because it's a fun topic to talk about. But our time is up, unfortunately. So tell everyone that's listening and watching where they can find you, where they can see all the projects, all the things that you're getting involved in. Go
Sure.
for
So yeah. So on the social, I'm iSocial Fans, or it's iSocial FANZ or Z at the end. iSocialFans.com is kind of my media hub. I just recently launched earlier this year my speaker website, which is brianfanzo.com. So you can check that out. My personal solo podcast is FOMO Fans. Which stands for the fear of missing out, and you can check that out in any of the podcasting apps. And for me, I love the game. I love where we're at, Gavin. It's been fun watching. You and I connected early on. We both are we're passionate about video. We love where this is going, but we also have bigger dreams and bigger things going on. And so I can't wait to share another stage with you, as we did over in Scotland. That was one of my favorite events, and I had a ball. So thanks so much for having me on. And I always say, for those that are listening, I'm on every social network. I create a lot of content. Don't follow me everywhere. Pick your favorite channel. Give me a follow on your favorite one. I would greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, and make sure you do that. Go and say hello to Brian on your favorite platform, because the content that he puts out there is epic. Brian, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Hey everyone, me again, and thank you so much for watching the video version of the podcast. I hope you found that very useful and valuable and entertaining. I hope it brought a smile to your face. Now, if you'd like to listen to more of the shows, then head over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify or your favorite podcasting platform, and you can check that out. And if you'd like to see the show notes from this week's show, head over to mrgavinbell.com/podcast to get that goodness.